Hi everyone, this is the second video of the series Blazor Server Cookie Authentication. So in the first video, we have created tables for our authentication and we have implemented NT framework and the database context. Now in this video, we are going to create user registration pages and we are going to implement the user registration logic. Okay, so for registration pages, we are going to use Razor pages into our Blazor application because pages pages must be reloaded on registering or login, right? So we are going to use Razor pages. If you want to use, you can use MVC controllers as well. It's your own choice, but I am going to do in Razor pages. Okay. So for that, what I will do, I am going to use the areas section of the ASP.NET Core application. So first to create folder like areas. Okay. Inside of it, another folder like identity. Okay. And inside of identity, add a folder like pages. Okay. Now inside of pages, let's create a folder like account. So this folder contains all the logic regarding to the registration or user login. Okay. Inside of pages, create one more folder like shared. Okay. Since we are trying to utilizing the area section, right? So first let's add the layout for the areas. So inside of the shared folder, let's add a file like layout.cshtml. Okay. Now let's add some basic HTML into our layout. Okay. So our layout HTML look like this. To save some time, I have copy pasted my HTML. So here small navigation bar, and then here we want to render our Razor pages. Okay. So this is the Razor syntax attribute to render the body. So here in this place, pages gets rendered. Okay. Now let's also create a viewport view imports under the pages section file like underscore view imports.cshtml. So in this view imports.cshtml, let's register the MVC helper tag namespace. And next, let's create the view state for our areas. And inside of that, we can specify our layout path. Okay. So in the pages folder itself, let's add one more file like underscore viewstart.cshtml. Okay, all these designs will be applied to our Razor pages. Like we are going to create login and user registration or any kind of authentication related pages we can add here. So they will share this layout. Okay, and for time being, I have added some dummy HTML, right? But in real application, you have to make sure this master layout should look like our Blazor WebAssembly master page. So that page you can observe in here. Like this design you have to do for real application. Okay. And let's in the view starts, let's define our master layout path. Okay. Okay. Like this, we have to define the layout path. Okay. So now basic structure for our areas is defined till now. Now let's create a registration form model. Okay. Add a folder like models. Inside of models, let's add one more folder like auth. And inside of auth, let me add a my registration model. So this is my registration view model. Now let's add few properties that are going to be used as a form fields. So our registration view model looks like this, where it contains first name, last name, email address, password, and confirm password fields. Okay. Now let's implement our user registration logic. For that, let's create a folder like logics. Okay. Inside of it, let's add a file like account logic. Okay, this is our iAccount logic class. As a first step, let's inject our database context into the constructor of this file. And now we have created a registration VM, right, form model. So first, let's create a private method into our account logic where we are going to validate our form fields. Okay. Okay. Our method looks like this. Let me first check our email in the form is entered or not, means is empty or not. Okay. So I can check like, so here I am checking basic email validation. It is empty or not. If it is empty, I am returning a error message like email can't be empty. Okay. Next, let's apply email email rules like whether entered email is valid or not. Okay. Like using the regex. Okay. Okay. Now here we will add a regular expression for email validation. So you can Google it to find this regular expression. You no need to create by your own. Okay. Is match with our registered email, comma, and the pattern is our email role. If it is not measurement means it is a not valid email, then we have to return one more error message. And now another rule we are going to apply now, that is whether the user is already registered with our application or not. We should check this as well. Okay. So for that, authentication context dot users dot any email to lower equal to register dot email dot to lower. Now we will return like user is already existed. Here any means it will fetches boolean value if already the user is existed with that email address. Okay. Now here you can return like the user is already exist. Okay. So these are the email validation rules. Now let's check for the password. Okay. Here we applying basic rule for password and confirm password. If any one of the field is empty, then we are returning a error message like password or confirm password can't be empty. Okay. Now we'll check for comparison. Okay. So here we are comparing between password and confirm password. If they are not matching, we will return a error message. Okay. Finally, we are going to apply the password set of rules like uppercase, lowercase, and special character number and character length. Like that, we are going to use a regular expression and validate our password. Okay. So here is the regular expression for password rules. Like here I am adding password rules like lowercase letter, at least one uppercase letter, one special character, and at least one number, and total length of the password is 8 characters. Okay, let's validate it. Okay, here we are validating our password again, regular expression, and if that is not match, we are going to return a error message. Finally, if every rule is satisfying, we simply return string.empty as a message. Okay, so this is our private method for validating our registration validation. Okay, now we have to add one more private method that is for password hashing. Okay, what is password hashing? So it is a rule that we never store our user password plainly directly into our database. Okay, it must be encrypted. So that encryption also we should not do normal encryption. The password once it encrypted, it cannot be decrypted. That means a string that can be encrypted and it cannot be decrypted is called hashing. So hashing is one way. So if password is hashed, it cannot be decrypted. So we have to do a password hashing. So for that, we are going to uh, add some private method where we implement our logic for password hashing. Okay. So my method is like, okay, this is my method where I am going to pass the user password as a input parameter. And now first thing is let's initialize a array like salt of byte 16 byte character salt. So what is salt? Salt is a key that will be used for hashing our password. Okay, so it will be like a key. Now using RNG crypto service provider, we are going to populate our salt. Okay, so RNG crypto service provider. So this loads from, let's import the namespace using system dot security dot cryptography. Okay, yes. And I have to get the bytes of data and push it into salt key. Okay, now will get some random generated bytes of code, 16 bit of code into this salt that was generated from the RNG crypto service provider. Okay, now we are going to hash our password using RFC algorithm. Okay, so RFC equal to new RFC 289 bytes, and here we can pass password as a first parameter and salt as a second parameter and iterations. I will specify like count. So what it will do means, okay, it will encrypt my password using this salt key, and in that encryption process, it will loop or iterate through 1,000 times. Here I have specified like 1,000, right? That many times it's going to encrypt by looping the pa password and salt key encryption. Okay, see, I am going to initialize a one more variable like hash. Okay, and I am going to fetch the some bytes of data from the hashed password. So here see, I am getting the 20 bytes of data from this hashed password. Okay, and I am storing it into the hash variable. So now let's create a one more byte variable that is like a hash bytes. Okay, so here its length will be 36 bytes. Okay, so here I have created a new variable hash bytes, and now what I will do means I am going to array dot copy. Okay, and specify the salt byte here, and next specify 0. So it's showing like source index. Source index means from the salt start from the 0, means from the first character onwards we are specifying. From the first character onwards we have to copy. To where to copy? We have to copy it to hash bytes. So in the hash bytes up to where? From 0 to 16 characters. So what it will do? It will hash bytes is 36 character, right? Here we are specifying salt from starting character. We have to copy into the hash byte variable up to where in the hash byte from 0 to 16 character byte space it should be copied. Means first 16 characters of hash byte is nothing but our salt. Okay. Same way now array dot copy. Okay, now here I can specify hash. Hash is what? Hash is nothing but my password, 20 characters password. Okay, comma 0 means starting from first character onwards. Okay, in the hash. Where I want to copy? I want to copy it into the my hash bytes. Okay, and from where? From 16th character onwards. See here, from 0 to 15 is occupied by the our salt key in the 36 byte of array. Now from the 16 byte to 20 means remaining 20 characters. I am going to take in from this hash means password hash. Okay. So finally what my hash bytes is contains, it contains its first 16 bits are salt key and remaining 16 bits are our hashed password. Okay. And finally what we will do, we'll simply return our password hash as a string. To that we are going to use base 64, and to that we are going to pass our hash bytes. Okay, so this is the logic for hashing our password. Now let's implement our main logic for user registration. So let me create a method like, so this is my user registration method, and its return type is a tuple. We are returning boolean value and a string message as a response type. So here what I can do, first let's validate my model. For that I am going to call registration model, and here we should have our registration model, right? So first I am validating the model properties, whether they are valid or not. Okay, so if it is contain message, what? If it is contain message, some error, some validation is occurred, means validation is failed. If we enter validation is success, we are returning string, right? Empty string. So if the variable contains something, then there is an error message in that variable. So in that case, I can simply return false comma message. Okay. Now let's create a new users model. Okay, that is our table users model. and map our users data from the registered model to our user model. So per password hash, we must call our password hash method, and to that we can pass our password as the input parameter. Okay. Now let's save the new user into the database. Okay, save the new user into the database. So for a newly registered user, should provide some basic rules. Okay. So if I go to my table, I have some lookup single record for my sample, like a role like username. So for any authenticated user in my application, see any registered user in my application, I want to give the user role as a default role. Okay. So now what I can do, let's fetch the role from the database where name dot toolover. So I want to fetch only user roles for my demo. Okay. Once we got the roles, we have to insert the role into our user roles mapping table. So if role not equal to null, user roles equal to new user roles. Okay. Since we have just created new user, right? From this we can get user ID equal to new user dot user ID and the role ID equal to role dot role ID. Okay. Now we have to save this user role into the database. So user roles dot add user roles and authentication dot save changes. Okay. That is our logic for user registration. So finally, if everything goes smooth, we'll return true and message will be empty because no validation errors. Okay. So this is our logic. So what we are doing, we are initially validating the user model. If everything goes good, we are adding the new user into the database. So by default, we want to provide a role like user to the new user. So we have to fetch the new user from the database, and using the user value and role value, we are going to update the values into the user roles table. Okay. So now let's create a interface class for my account logic. So this is my account logic interface. Let's register the our method definition here. So our method definition is like this. Okay. And now inherit the account logic here. Now register them in the program.cs at scope level. And scope for every request, it will be a single object. Okay. Okay. And now let's add our Razor pages into our accounts folder inside of the areas. So let's add our Razor pages inside of the accounts folder like so register.cs html.cs is for model file, register.cs html is the view file. Okay, first let's define our model. Okay, so this is our model class. To make it this class as a our Razor page model, we have to inherit page model. Now let's inject our iAccount logic into our register model constructor. Let's register our register VM model and enable form binding. Okay, so create a property like public register VM. So to make it model binding with our form, we have to decorate with bind property attribute. Okay, now it can read the data from the form directly. Let me add a one more property like string error message. So with this variable, we are going to display if any error occurred, that message will be displayed on our page. Okay, and let's create one more variable, that is bool is registration successful. Okay, so these are the properties required by our Razor page, and this is the property where we decorate only to this property as a bind property, so it has capability to read the form data. Okay, now let's create a lifecycle method like Razor lifecycle method like get on async, which gets executed for HTTP GET request. So now we have to inject one more instance into our constructor, that is a context accessor. Okay, if HTTP context dot user dot identity dot is authenticated. If user is already authenticated, we should not allow him to access the registration form. Okay, in that case, we simply redirect him back to application home page. Okay, or else we can show, if not authenticated, we can show the registration page. Okay, now let's add, and here I have added, copy pasted some HTML data for my registration form to save some time. So let's walk through the HTML what I have added here. So using page directory, we have to specify our path for our registration page, and we have to define the model. So this is our model, right? Register model. So same model must be declared here as a model. And here, if you observe error message, if error message exists, we are displaying the error message. Okay. If at all, if there is registration successful, then we are showing some small alert message here. And down here, user registration fields like email, name, last name, password, and confirm password fields are added. And to this, we have to remember one thing, that we have to use the Razor ASP for, to that Razor ASP for, we have to find our property so that our register model can read the properties from entered in the form. Okay, like that register form dot first name, register form dot last name, register form dot password. Okay, everything must be binded to the field. Okay, and here form method should be post. Okay, now let's add our logic for post method. So our post method looks here. I can use my account logic methods like user registration equal to await underscore account logic dot user registration method is in to this method. So form data is binded to this property, right? I can send register form variable directly. Okay. So if what it will returning this method returns boolean success and a message. So what is that message? Message is error message. So if the registration success is not success means false registration is not successful, then we will have an error message, right? So to display error message we have property error message, and this property we are displaying here conditionally if there is something in the message. Okay, so what I can do, error message equal to registration dot message. Okay, else in the else what we can do is successful equal to we can assign as true. Okay, and simply we will display the same page. Okay, in real world you will have a logic for confirm email where you have to send the user with a confirmation URL as a email. Okay, for the demo purpose I am not doing any email confirmation here. Simply I will after registration I will simply display the registration form itself. Builder dot services dot add http context accessor. Okay, okay, and small correction. Let's give it here reverse order. Okay, if not matched, if matched that is okay, if not matched. Okay, okay, now this is our user registration form. Let's test the validations for our email. If I submit with empty form, see email cannot be empty. Okay, and let's give a invalid email. Okay, this is a invalid email format, right? And submit, see not a valid email. So let's give some valid email and first name last name, and now give empty password and confirm password. See, they cannot be empty. And now let's give some weak password which doesn't satisfy our regular expression. Okay, like 1234 1234. Okay, it is a very weak password, right? Let's check our password validation firing or not. See, password should contain at least one lower, one upper, one special. So our rules are all displaying. So let's now give a proper password. Okay, now register now with proper details. See, user is registered successfully. Okay, now if we go to our database, okay, here you can see my user record is successfully inserted into the table, and here you can see my hashed password, and you can also observe role one, that is nothing but user role is assigned to our user. Okay, that means we are successfully registered into our database. So that's all about the user registration in our Blazor Server Cookie Authentication series. So in the next video, we are going to implement the user login logic. Okay. I hope this video had delivered some useful information to you all. So if you like my video, please support me by subscribing to my channel. Soon we are going to meet with new videos. Until then, signing off.